I'm
I'm
sure
just
if I
saying that
opened,
the PC has some competition.
there is definitely some competition there. I might just start stuffing my chicken inside my computer though and see.
Yeah. Yeah, just stick it right next to the motherboard.
Yeah, just lay it on top of the graphics card.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nala.
And I'm Faith.
And this is the Sirens Den, a fandom podcast where we talk all things movies, TV, and pop culture to our heart's content.
Today on our show, we have pro gamer Acr1ycSp4rk. Thanks for joining us, dude.
Hi guys, how's it going?
So, Acrylic, any fun games you've been playing recently?
Among Us, that would be the big one. It's pretty popular nowadays. I'm sure you guys have played it before. If
Yeah.
not, I would definitely recommend it. It's a fun game. It's fun to
Oh, yeah.
challenge your friendship in some ways that you may never thought that you might challenge your friendship before. So
It's the new, Werewolf and Mafia. I mean,
mhm.
those are always
Mm-hmm.
fun to... they get really heated, too, so I think it's cool when you get really big debates on who's sus and who's not.
For sure, I'm usually one who gets sussed out pretty often by my friends. A lot of blame gets thrown my way. Just it's easier to eliminate me early than deal with me later on.
I had a funny moment the other day because I just got it for the Switch because it just came out on the Switch, but I'm used to mobile. And I was the imposter and I was feeling really cocky. And I meant to sabotage and I pressed kill because I wasn't used to the controls and I killed
Oh,
someone
no.
in front of like 5 people. So then, of course, like they reported the body. I was like, okay, hear me, but I convinced them to hear me out. My defense was that it was self-defense because they were gonna catch me killing them.
If you remember when we played, I was the imposter, and frankly, I don't like being the imposter because every time I kill someone, I end up hitting the report. So I end up self-reporting, and I remember the first time they were like, "So, Nala, you reported. What do you have to report?" And I'm like, "Oh, I did? That was me? I was too busy killing people. I didn't mean to report, me."
That's right.
And I ended up getting away with it. And then unfortunately, the next time again, I self-reported, and that was enough to get me kicked out.
Yeah, when you start reporting all of the bodies, it becomes a little sus. Like, why are you always near all the bodies?
So, moving on to the news. In TV news, the Lord of the Rings pilot just finished shooting in Amazon Studios. So, that's moving forward. It's still happening. It's going to be a prequel series, I believe, to the films.
Isn't that just The Hobbit?
I think it's pre-Hobbit too. Yeah, you know what? That's fair. They're pre-prequeling.
Well, I mean, cool. I mean, I guess it's cool that we're getting another franchise, and it's Amazon, so it's going to be pretty. I don't know. I'm not pumped for it. I listened to the audiobooks as a kid and that's how I fell asleep.
I'm interested definitely in checking it out. Lord of the Rings has always been something that I've enjoyed growing up. It was something I used to watch a lot with my family. So we used to watch the extended cuts, the director cut, or what have you. And I really enjoyed it. The newer ones, I don't know how you guys feel about like the Hobbit and the series that they did there. I enjoyed it, I will admit, but not as much as I enjoyed the original movies. I felt like it just came across at times like let me just say one of the things I really enjoyed about Lord of the Rings is the practical effects that they did. So like the makeup, the costumes, and everything that went into that and designing kind of like the world around the physical aspect. I really enjoyed that, and they didn't do too much that was too heavy with like CGI and the computer effects. But I feel like
Mhm.
in The Hobbit, they're pretty heavy handed on doing a lot of CGI effects, which kind of,
Yeah.
in my opinion, took like away from like the magic and like the mysticism of the Lord of the Rings universe. And one thing I always feel like is that CGI just doesn't really stand the test of time, whereas practical
Definitely.
effects tend to hold up a lot better for longer periods of time. But
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see for sure what they do with this new pilot. It's not something that I've seen too much about, so it's kind of exciting to hear about for sure. But yeah, I'd love to see kind of where they go with it.
Being the
Yeah, and
case, as someone who is a Lord of the Rings person, what is kind of your wish list for this show? Like, what is you kind of talk about how you want more practical effects, and I think that's totally or I want to say valid's not the right word. That's I think the right way to go with it. I think you're absolutely on the money that practical always holds up better. But other than that, what's like the dream Lord of the Rings show?
I mean, so for Lord of the Rings, I guess what I'd be looking for in a show, other than of course like the practical effects, because I did really enjoy that aspect of it for sure. What I'd be looking for in it is kind of maybe like getting back to the roots of it. So like the nitty gritty aspect of Lord of the Rings, really getting immersed in that world and that universe and like the turmoil and all the havoc and chaos that surrounds the time that's happening there. Seeing that it's a prequel, it's hard to speak too much on it because it'd be interesting, I guess, to see like the world beforehand. I don't know if they're going to go into like the creation of the rings and more of the turmoil and the wars and everything that happened around that time period or not. But I mean, it's definitely interesting to see kind of where they're going to go with it, and what kind of stories they're going to craft out of that, and how they're going to tie that into the lore that's already well established, with where it's come to nowadays and everything. The Hobbit was definitely very interesting, but like I said, it felt like the CGI was a little much. It was pretty heavy handed there, and I felt like it was a little bit lighter, not quite as nitty gritty. Lord of the Rings really had this kind of feeling that it conveyed, in my opinion, of like this like almost dark kind of side to it, um,
Mhm.
and I felt like The Hobbit didn't really hold to that as well. I felt like it was a little bit more lighthearted and it was more of like a family film in a sense. Whereas the original Lord of the Rings definitely didn't feel like they were much of a family film, like not something that you'd sit around with your kids and watch. Even though it's fantasy, it definitely has things that, when I watched it, I was younger and it definitely scared me at some parts. It was definitely thrilling. And I feel like that really grabbed me, and really also stimulated some of my imagination as a kid versus like watching The Hobbit now, where I feel like it felt almost like I hate to say silly, but it felt silly at times for me. So I'd be interested to see what they do with a prequel before that and how they approach it this time, especially with Amazon. I don't know if you guys have watched other shows that Amazon has been doing recently, but I think that they've brought a lot of interesting things for sure, especially with the boys. That's a show I really enjoy watching, and then even when they do a lot of CGI in the boys, and they've done it really well. And I think that they've brought a lot of really good visual scenes there as well that can be shocking at times, as well as nitty and gritty. And I think that they definitely have shown that they have the ability to bring that to another show as well. So I'd be really interested to see how Amazon kind of handles a prequel for this.
I mean, Amazon Studios has proven to put out good stuff, whether it be Oscar-winning films or really well done shows. So I'm excited to see what they do. I'm excited to see more of the Lord of the Rings world. I'm excited for the costumes. What I'm not wanting in the show is for it to be overdone. So I kind of agree with you with practical effects. You know, it is a almost dying art form that I don't think needs to die because it can be done so well.
Hmm.
I don't want to see Lord of the Rings kind of turned into something for shock value. Like, Game of Thrones esque, where it's like just brutal violence for the sake of brutal violence and all this stuff. I hope they're more tasteful with how they bring this delicate world to life, because J.R.R. Tolkien, they have a lot of lore to pull
Right.
from. So I think they can, if they do handle it with care, it could be a really awesome show.
I think I'd be interested to see how it goes and what direction that they put this in. Because even though I don't have a lot of stakes in this, one thing I have heard a lot is a lot of people want to make the next Lord of the Rings without understanding what makes Lord of the Rings great. It'd be really it's interesting kind of seeing, because whoever's the showrunners, they're obviously not the original creators of Lord of the Rings. These are obviously people's attempts at telling the next great Lord of the Rings in that universe. So it'll be interesting to see from the fandom perspective, just if they understand what makes Lord of the Rings a good show.
Well, moving on to some TV news, and also in the same vein of streaming services, Warner Brothers has recently announced that they're going to be moving forward with this release plan of releasing movies in theaters and on the streaming service, HBO Max, but they say they want their risky movies to be released solely on HBO Max, which is right now Batgirl and Static Shock. So, I mean, how does that make y'all feel?
I don't like that the girl superhero movie and the black superhero movie are the risky movies.
My thoughts
Doesn't
exactly,
sit right with
for
me,
sure.
because it's not.
I feel like if Zack Snyder were to make another Man of Steel, that would be risky.
Also, are we not going to talk about Black Panther and it was one of the most successful superhero movies to come out in the last decade?
Absolutely. And everyone was totally on board for Static Shock, and they were like, yes, let's go, let's do this. And now they're like, oh.
Did they not watch the collective internet lose their mind when we all found out Static Shock was going to come back because we all loved that show as kids? Like, everyone loves Static Shock.
So I actually haven't seen the Static Shock show.
Static Shock was...
Is it in the DC universe?
Yeah. There's episodes where he teamed up with Batman. And it was a comic before that. It was a really good show.
To an
it was also
mutagen.
That's what it was. But they also, I remember that they were one of those shows that did cover kind of more serious topics, and they didn't, even though it was a kid show, they didn't treat it like a kid show.
Well, it was still like the superhero fantasy, like, I mean, you say they didn't treat it like a kid's show, and you're right. It's like Batman. You look at Batman, right? And while there are some, universes where Batman can be pretty like nitty gritty and dark at times, in general, Batman, it's like the symbol of hope, and he never really like does anything that, like one of his big things is like he doesn't kill the villains that he's up against, right? Like he uses like non-lethal force, right? And so in a sense, like a lot of, it definitely caters to that ability of being a kid show because it holds these values that we, these things that we value, like justice and, like this Three Musketeers, all for one for all kind of idealism, where like it's for the betterment of everybody else. And that's what I find interesting about superhero shows, because like I said, they can be nitty gritty at times, and you look at The Boys and it's like a totally different take on it. But Static Shock is more of like this very like he's a high school kid, I believe, who gets these superpowers, and his newfound ability to fight like these evil powers and his pursuit of justice through these new superpowers that he comes through, and what that means kind of for him through his own experiences as a kid. And it's like we all experience like injustices in high school, and I think that ties into some of these superheroes as well.
Well, what I mean by they treated it more mature is in the sense that it was a Saturday morning cartoon, but they tackled subjects like very bluntly, like homelessness and drug use and addiction and gang violence and all these different things. Racism was a big one that came up. It was really honest in its conversations that it had. I remember that.
Yeah, and I think that's very valuable. For sure.
But yeah, it's unfortunate that they're admitting that they see this as a risk, though.
So I'm wondering if they're also maybe doing that I mean, their choice of word for risky, I don't think was the right choice. I'm wondering if they're doing that because people will keep the subscription, so it's not all like, oh, if they're releasing them in theaters now, we can just go see them in theaters. We don't need HBO Max anymore. But they're like, oh, but if you want to see these ones, they're not going to be released in theaters. And they're almost like hedging it on the fans who really want to see it, being willing to continue having their HBO Max subscription.
Yeah, but I mean, that also is kind of scummy in the sense that, like, they have all these superhero movies that are going to be coming out, and they're like, okay, we need movies to keep people on the subscription base. They have to do this extra thing to see them, so we're going to do it with the woman superhero movie and the black superhero movie. Like,
no, I definitely agree. It is pretty scummy.
Really not a justification for.
So for Batgirl, I think I'm not sure how they're going to be moving forward with it being Barbara Gordon from like the new Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, in which Chief Gordon is played by Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright, yeah, from Westworld. So I don't know if they're going to be doing it then, because that kind of takes place in the past. And if they're looking at doing like a 52, like a new 52 Batgirl, then maybe they'd be focusing on her Burnside comic. Batgirl of Burnside. That would be awesome to see.
Yeah.
In the Batgirl of Burnside comic, she moves to a new city or she moves to a new neighborhood and unexpectedly becomes the popular new hero until a mysterious enemy of her past sets out to ruin her reputation and ultimately destroy her. I think that would be an awesome movie that I would absolutely see in theaters.
I don't know too much about the story of Batgirl. I'll be honest. My Batman knowledge has been through various series, lots of different series, just bits and pieces of different Batman series throughout the different animated series that they've done. So, I've seen a little bit of some of the original Batmans, some of the live action Batmans that were done, a long time ago. Holy vats of burning acid Batman type style to more of the dark nitty gritty Dark Knight kind of series, and then all the way to the movies that we got of Dark Knight as well, with Heath Ledger and Christian Bale. I'm terrible with actors' names. Sorry, I'm so bad at actors' names. I had to look up Jeffrey Wright earlier. But with Christian Bale and seeing some of those as well, I find it very interesting. But it's hard to speak to because I haven't seen too much, unfortunately, of the Batgirl kind of side of it in that aspect. So I'm definitely intrigued to see something. That's for sure.
Batgirl has been relatively neglected in the main Batman franchises that we got, especially in the live action movies, because she hasn't been in them. So it'll be nice to be.
Wasn't she in Batman and Robin? Like, wasn't she played by Alicia Silverstone?
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that one.
So she was done.
So she's
kind of. She was in the Bat Nipples version of the Batman series, which is a bummer.
So the most important Batman film.
Well, I'm excited to see, regardless what they decide to do. If they unfortunately end up going the way that they do with it releasing just on HBO Max, then whatever, I'll watch it. But all right, well, let's move on to our next topic in gaming. This is again
the most important gaming news to come out this year is we're getting a new console, a new shiny console, and it's not the PS5, it's not the Switch Pro, it's not the Xbox, whatever. No, it is the KFC console, the KF console. It is KFC's gaming console. Specs. It has specs, probably. But most importantly, it can keep your chicken warm.
That's all you really want in a gaming console, is it not? Like,
Yeah.
PS5 better step up their game and add a cup holder to their next one.
Yeah, it will. It's going to have a Cooler Master NC100 chassis based on an Intel Nuke 9 Extreme compute element. But yeah, it'll use a 9th gen Intel Core i9 processor. It will have a graphics card, assumably. And I have no idea what kind of games will be able to play on it. But apparently, it will support VR gaming and can offer up to 240 frames per second on gaming select titles at 4K resolution. So it's not a bad system. It'll work. I'd be really interested in playing it just to see how it compares or just see how it runs. I would really want to just run a game on it just to see what it does.
What do you think, Acrylic? Is this something you'd consider buying and gaming on?
Yeah, especially as someone who's a kind of definitely more of a gamer than either of us.
It's interesting. I mean, an Intel i9 processor is not bad at all by any means. 4K resolution, 240 hertz output. Like it's not definitely not a terrible.
Yeah, and most
terrible
importantly,
design, so.
Acrylic, can your computer keep your chicken warm?
I don't think it'll
So
keep
if
my
this is a
chicken as warm. That's for sure.
Yeah, so if this is basically a computer and you have a computer, but this is a computer that keeps your chicken warm, I'm
sure
just
if I
saying that
opened-
the PC has some competition.
There is definitely some competition there. I might just start stuffing my chicken inside my computer though and see.
Yeah. Yeah, just stick it right next to the motherboard.
Yeah, just lay it on top of the graphics card.
All right, now it's time to jump into our main topic of the episode, Wonder Woman 1984. To give you a spoiler-less review, it was really good in terms of costumes, the new outfits that they had for Wonder Woman, both in like terms of armor and in terms of her personal style, was really just I always love good art direction. I like that it was, you know, brighter in the 80s with the neon and the jazzercise. It contrasted the first one back in, 1917, where it was dingy and it was gross. And, Diana managed to look pretty dope back then, but she looks even cooler in the more flashier things of the 80s.
I definitely agree with that. The last Wonder Woman fell into this trope that I'm really glad that superhero movies aren't doing anymore, but it was kind of in the tail end. And it was when all the superhero movies were just color graded to be really dark and dreary and just like moody action colors. And it was always obnoxious because these are based off of comic book, guys. Have you not read a comic book? They're so colorful and pretty. And finally, people have taken a clue. And I'm really glad that we really got some of that nice color and beauty and vividness in this one as compared to the last one, which was so dreary.
Definitely. Another thing I liked is, the acting. I loved all the characters in there. As y'all know from my Mando episode, Pedro Pascal is always a delight. And he really took his character, even though his character was changed a lot. He still, I think, did a really good job being a convincing madman.
One thing that I really enjoyed was like how they tried. They almost they had fun with it, right? Without getting too specific, and if it is too specific, Ty, please feel free to edit it out. There's that scene though where Chris Pine is trying on all those different outfits, and they kind of have fun with that, and I really enjoyed that. And it's very contrasting to like what you guys were saying. The first Wonder Woman definitely encapsulates a time period, and during that time period, it definitely is like it is dreary. It's during a war. Everybody's in the same kind of color clothing. It's just this olive green, khaki kind of colors, and it's not really designed to pop. And in this one, it's definitely set in a time period where like popping was the thing to do. and I think they did a good job of kind of capturing that as well. So I think overall, one thing that I enjoyed about both of them so far has been that they really like encapsulated the style and the kind of feel of both the periods that they're kind of set in. Definitely this one though, I felt like they had a little bit more room to have fun with it, and I think they did a pretty good job of exploring that.
Yeah, I think because the movie had a lot of strengths and had a lot of weaknesses, and art direction, one of the biggest strengths. Cinematography, gorgeous. The acting, as Nala said, I thought every character was acting so amazingly. I think where the movie fell weak for me was the plot. The plot
Yeah,
was a plot. It was a plot in a movie. It was a movie that had a plot.
definitely. I would agree with that 100%. I think the cinematography was great. The opening scenes, the first 10-15 minutes of it really kind of set this nice, vibrant, kind of setting, this nice little universe that you're set in. It kind of goes back to the roots of it, and I really enjoyed that feeling of it. Seeing the Amazonian kind of culture and creating this beautiful, absolutely beautiful world that you could explore a little bit there in as well. And I did really enjoy that about it. But
Mhm.
once you get into the writing of the series, it's definitely a little iffy for me. I,
Yeah, there's a lot of things that they were introduced, but they didn't really give a set of rules of how this is how it works, or if they did, they changed it because it just worked better for the plot that way. It felt like a lot of writing for the sake of making a plot happen, as opposed to really exploring Diana as a character and these other characters as characters, which they feel they had hints of that a little bit, but ultimately it really kind of fell short when mixed with just a plot that really didn't make any sense.
I agree. I'd give it 3 out of 6 lassos of truth, and that's the truth.
I think
It
that's
was just like
fair.
a solid 50% movie.
I would give it a out of meh. It was, and I keep thinking about it. The more I think about it, the more I like don't like things about it. So,
Oh yeah.
but right now I'm about the same thing. It's about 50%. It was a movie.
And of course, maybe we put a little bit too much expectation on it, expecting it to be the first Wonder Woman, because they did really good things in the first
Mhm.
Wonder Woman, in terms of the subtlety, in terms of the characters' chemistries, and bringing in more than just the love interests. They brought in
Yeah.
a team, and I always love a good team up movie. This one, I just felt like it was a lot of things happening that didn't need to happen, that could have been avoided by a certain thing. I mean, we'll get more in depth. I mean, I'm not surprised. I really wish they could have put a little more effort into this.
Yeah. What about you, Acrylic? What's your rating?
I think Wonder Woman started off strong, and I think it showed a lot of potential. And a lot of things that we've talked about, like the cinematography, setting the stage, the scene, the vibe of the movie. I think it kind of had a really strong start to that, and they had a lot that they could do with that. I think overall, though, I think that the writing did kind of fall short as the movie progressed. I think it didn't really bring a shine to it or polish it off, and it left me wanting more from the movie than what I was left with. So as far as an overall rating goes, um, I would say, yeah, I think it's a pretty strong 50%. It's not a I didn't necessarily enjoy it. I didn't love it. It left me wanting more, and maybe just a tad bit disappointed overall. But it was definitely something that I did enjoy in the beginning, and I think that they have a lot of potential to do more with the series in the future. So I would be still excited to see another one,
Mhm.
and see kind of where they go with it from there for sure. I would love to see more about the Amazonian kind of culture, and
Yeah,
exploring
I
more of
would
Yeah, I
that.
love that
watch that.
I guess, this could move on. We'll move on to the spoilery review, because I wanted to see more of Themyscira. I was bummed
Mhm.
that we didn't get more of her flashing back. It like, because I love that world, and I was bummed that, you know, she was never able to return to the world. So I would have liked to see it more in her memories and spend maybe more time with young Diana. But yeah, so that was, you know, just the first scene. And Faith, take it away with breaking down the movie.
So, yeah, as Nala said, that first scene, we got young Diana again. She was in a really awesome big race with a bunch of other Amazonians. It's like a big honor to win. She almost wins, but then she gets lost, so she takes a shortcut. And then right before she's about to take the victory, her aunt stops her, who knows she took a shortcut, and tells her that she's not ready. She cheats. And her aunt tells her that she has to be honest as a warrior. I think the exact quote was, no true hero is born from lies, which is supposed to be the theme of the movie, which it kind of is in a loose sense. It wasn't. It's what they told. That's what the movie wanted it seemed to be, and then it was not that. But the movie thinks that that's its theme. But the whole sequence was really cool, and it's really unfortunate because it was a cool way to start that movie. I was really excited to see what that was setting up, and it turned out it wasn't.
So I agree. And that's why I kind of wanted them to go back to Themyscira, because, you know, if we saw maybe her doing this competition again and again and again, because it seems like by the time she becomes Wonder Woman, she is ready. So I think that theme could have been driven home a little more if, you know, we were allowed to go back and to spend more time with her past and her upbringing.
Yeah.
So I did like the first scene. I liked the additional world building in it. Maybe we'll get more in the third Wonder Woman, but I did want to see more of the Amazonians.
Yeah.
I think they're awesome.
Acrylic, what did you think of their opening?
My thoughts on the opening is that it creates this really unique universe that it draws you into. It's got this kind of ancient Greece kind of vibe, this a little bit of like the Olympic sports kind of feeling to it. And it's really exciting to kind of see how, you know, like this culture's take on that is. And it's obvious that it's like this tournament of excellence where warriors get a chance to prove themselves through these trials, basically. And I do think that they tried to convey this message early on through this opening about, you know, like, or what was the exact wording in the series where she stopped her and said something about like a true warrior's.
Yeah, no true hero is born from lies.
Yeah, no true hero is born for lie or born from lies. And then she also said that if you're not ready to win, then you won't, and that's okay. And it kind of set this precedent for the story, you know, almost like a little bit of foreshadowing, but I didn't feel like they really capitalized on it very well. Because, you know, as it goes on, it doesn't, I don't want to get too much into what happens later, but it doesn't really, I feel like, tie in too well with that overall. It's like they set it up to and they wanted it to, but they didn't really follow through with it well enough, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, next part we get kind of our part A of the movie. We're introduced to Washington DC in the 80s. We see that Diana is working at the Smithsonian for some reason. She fights as Wonder Woman in her spare time. She stops a group of robbers in a mall, which admittedly that was my favorite scene of the movie. That was the highlight of the movie. Everything went downhill from there.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about how hilarious that robber scene was? So it was, because we start out, it's a jewelry heist robbery. It starts off really serious that they're like, take us to the stuff in the back. And then they immediately turn into the Stooges from Home Alone.
Oh yeah, it was very much situational comedy. And like the fact that she held one of the guys up from their feet, I was like, okay, you know what? This is cheesy. This is comic booky. I dig it. Like, this is Diana not taking herself too seriously.
I was losing my mind at the part where like the cops surround two of them, and then one of them grabs a kid and yells, "I'm not going back to jail!" And the other three robbers are like, "Stop, dude!
What are you doing?
What are you doing?" And he's like dangling her off a balcony, and the other three robbers are like, "Bro, you're gonna get us all shot. Stop. Don't, it's not worth it." I was dying during that whole moment. And then she comes in and like kicks their butt and then breaks the security camera after she's already kicked one of their butts. And then she throws a different little girl into the teddy bear who's like, "Woo!" And then she like beats the other two up, and she looks to the little girl and like goes, "You're going to be silent, right?" And the little girl's like, "Yeah, wink."
Is that a threat?
Yeah, it's one of those scenes
Like-
where they're not trying to take it too seriously. They're trying to have fun with it, and definitely like looking at it. If you want to be analytical about it, for sure. Like there are things that I think even could have kept the same vibe of what they were going for that lighthearted humor with it, but also could have
Yeah.
tied into the story better. Like what you said, she disables the cameras after exposing herself to him first. And it's like
that was my favorite part. That was she beat one of them. Like they saw her. Everyone saw that.
Right. She's not really hiding herself from anybody in plain sight. She disables the cameras for some reason. One thing I felt like though too, just overall with the movie, the lasso of truth is definitely overpowered. I definitely need to get me one of those, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. I like that they used more of the lasso in this one.
That was really nice. Yeah, and we get to see a little bit of the lasso at work in the beginning. Also in the beginning, we're introduced to our important side characters of this one. So the main ones being Barbara Ann Minerva, a kind of very down on herself, shy, awkward new employee at the Smithsonian, and Max Lord, the big oil tycoon who's on TV and is making big promises of wealth and fortune, blah, 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 blah. Those are the important people. Diana meets Barbara. They hit it off. Barbara is asked to investigate the stone that was stolen in the robbery because the four robbers wanted it for something.
So I was just like, I wish they could have focused on one or the other, because focusing on both they didn't give enough time to either character. Both characters really just escalated in every scene they were in, but not in like in a way that made sense. It was more in like we have a time crunch and this stuff needs to all happen around the same time, when instead they could have just put more focus like they did in the first one. Even though they had that misdirection of villain, the main person that they were hunting down, we kept seeing and we kept being focused on them. So I think I liked their characters and I like their portrayals of them. I just wish they could have done one over the other.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up too, because it definitely felt rushed to me, especially with Minerva more so than Max Gold, because you're right, both are rushed. They touch a little bit with Max on his son, and they don't really go into much detail about it, and they don't bring a lot of depth to it. And Minerva, like that one, I feel like is just something that the writers wanted to easily explain away through the convenient plot, sequences that happened. The truth of, or stone, shoot, what is it called?
It doesn't matter. It was the plot device, the MacGuffin
Yeah, it
stuff.
was a very convenient way where basically they wanted to dramatically change her character to make her a villain, and they did that through this device. Like we're gonna give her what she wants, and she desires to be like this popular girl, but we're gonna give her also her superpowers. But then we're gonna take away kind of like her humanity in a sense, so we can make her a convenient villain.
The FBI investigates, or the FBI says they're going to investigate the stone. Diana reads that it's Latin. She's like, "Oh, it's a wishing thing." And she makes a wish that's like, "Man, I wish this man who's been dead for 66 years wasn't dead anymore." And Barbara wishes to be more like Diana. They meet at a gala. Barbara starts to become more confident in herself, and Diana meets Steve, who's in a different body. And the guy Max Lord is there, and he seduces Barbara and steals the stone. That's a lot happened.
This is where the movie started to lose me, honestly. I just feel like a wish is, and a stone, a dream stone that can grant wishes is not, they didn't do it, they didn't make it that menacing. It's like there wasn't there wasn't the phenomenal cosmic power that usually comes with wishes. Like, I was expecting him to become physically, a la, like Jafar, where he becomes physically more powerful and or more magical things happen.
Definitely, like I think they set up potential for him to be like a genie that grants his own wish almost. But I think one of the biggest issues with the movie is how convenient it is that they don't explain the rules until the very end, right?
Yeah.
So that way they can make sure that there's as little plot holes in the whole process as possible. And I think choosing a device that just is like this omnipotent kind of wish granting device, and maybe it's not omnipotent because there's a price to be paid, right? But it's convenient they don't explain that till later when they can choose what prices are most convenient for them. But it took a lot of like the magic away from the storytelling.
Yeah, and for me, the part that did lose me the most is just Steve Trevor coming back, because that was the big question when the trailer dropped. How are they going to bring him back? And I'm wondering if they could have instead brought him back as like a really vivid illusion, instead of going the route that they did, which is just putting him in another person's body. And then the explanation for why he looks like Chris Pine is that's all I can see. But, in reality, he looks like someone else. So I was like, if you're gonna have that much of a hallucination anyway, that, you can only see Chris Pine's version, then why not just have it be a full hallucination to begin with? I think it would have been cool to have it be, and maybe it could have added some more to the lightheartedness if it was, a wish that only she could see. So, she's maybe talking to him and no one else can see him, and they're like, what is this? What's happening?
Or even why not just bring him back as a real life living being person instead of just a hallucination or a ghost?
Yeah,
because at that point, what difference
that
does it
too.
really make? But I agree, like they don't really explain away, there's not a good explanation for why he appears as Chris Pine, right? And then on top of that, it's just, why do they need to put him or his, I guess in this case it seems like a soul or spirit, right? They're putting it in somebody else's body. Like, why does that need to be the case instead of just bringing back a ghost or hallucination, or just bringing back the character himself as if he was resurrected?
Yeah, it was just like, so I get why we as the audience saw him as Steve as opposed to whoever that other dude was. Just that makes sense to me cinematic wise, but I feel it was still done really clunkily. There were so many better ways that you can do that plot device. Like, there's no reason he can't just suddenly be in the city, like, where the hell am I, in his war getup, right? That
I mean, that could have been a cool callback to the first one, where Diana doesn't know much about the modern world, quote unquote, and he's like, wait, Diana, you're not wearing any pants, that's not okay. And that could have instead been flipped if he was still in war getup, where they still could have played off of that. I just think it's weird that, if this Dreamstone wasn't a monkey paw type thing, she would have stayed with him forever, and this man is basically just like gone from his life. I don't know. Did he think he was asleep? Like, did he wake up one day and then wake up the next day and be like, I don't remember this past like 2 weeks. What
Yeah.
happened? Like that is just like
Yeah.
a lot of those little like plot holes that I'm like, why did you
It's
have
just-
to involve another person in this? It's kind of weird.
I kind of just wish he wasn't in the movie too. I'm kind of there's just a part of me, there's the angry feminist part of me that's annoyed that he's been dead for 66 years and she never got over him. She never once like learned to I think it would and even if they kept him in the movie, I think it would have been a lot more interesting if she had gotten over him and had to learn to kind of live with him again as opposed to just yeah, she's been pining and mourning him for 66 years. She's never loved anyone else. She's immortal. I don't know. I just there's some I feel like that wasn't the best take on her character and I kind of worked against her in the movie for me. Moving on, yeah, Steve's back. The dude steals the stone. He starts granting wishes to people, and they're like, "Oh God, he's in Cairo. We need to go to Cairo to tell him to stop." And then they go to Cairo, and some action happens. That's what I think happened. I just watched this. I watched that sequence. I was starting to get just so.
I think
That's about the
Uh,
same time I started turning off too.
yeah, I think this is really also the part too where like the biggest plot holes start to show themselves, especially concerning the magical device, right? Like this is where it's really obvious. This is the first time that Max Gold is like, here's what I'm gonna grant your wish, but here's the price I'm gonna take. You know, and where they start to kind of vaguely outline what the rule.
Oh, I guess he was say I get like, is that what he was doing? He was declaring he was declaring the price that that person was gonna take?
Yeah, so the scene ensues with the guy claiming that he wants like his ancestral rights basically back for the land and whatever, and it's going to cause an uproar in the this country. And the price though that Max says is, I'm going to take your whole security detail and basically your whole like military power with me, you know, and leave you unprotected. So while this man got his wish granted, he was left vulnerable and had to pay the consequences. So in reality, his wish wasn't really granted in the way that he wanted it to be. But initially, what Max had wanted from him was his oil. And this is kind of where, you know, it started with Max trying to get all the oil so he
Yeah.
could get that power or that money or what have you. But instead, he ends up taking his security detail, which again, then just happens to be a convenient plot point for later on when he's dealing with all these people at the front of his business trying to get in. He happens to have the security detail out there, and you see that later on. It's not really noted, but you do see the Egyptian security detail out there holding back all like the people trying to get in to see Max Gold at his business. So
Yeah, and I remember there was like that one throwaway line where he's like in his office and someone comes in and it's like, the police are here. There's a jurisdiction issue with your security detail. And that was just a little
yeah.
throwaway joke.
This part of the movie also confused me because I'm like, why are we making it a worldwide thing in such a small time crunch? Like, even if they were on a super fast jet, I don't think they would have been able to make it by the time. Like, all the timelines converged at the same time. It was all, like you said, really convenient that all this stuff keeps happening and Diana's just, 1 second away, even though logistically, maybe not. It was also just why is this here? Like, I'm not really sure I learned much from that scene other than, I guess, the extent of Maxwell's power and how far he's willing to go. But again, I was just like, I was bummed that it was another, going to an Arab country and the only thing they care about is oil and, that stuff. I was like, okay, this is a very stereotypical view once again.
Yeah, right.
And to sideline real quick too, the scene that ensues as they're fleeing, you were talking about as well the convenient timing, right? So basically, Wonder Woman shows up as soon as he's finished his trade or wish granting trade or what have you with I don't know what to call him. But anyways, he's leaving with the security detail, and she shows up just basically after that point, and they buy the taxi cab, which also didn't make 100% sense to me. And maybe I'm nitpicking, but it's like, why not just pay the guy to drive faster than kick him out of the car and buy the whole car from him? But again, maybe that's just me nitpicking.
I
So
think it's to
besides
show
that
that
point,
he's rich now.
yeah, here we're gonna make sure that you're happy with us stealing your car and possibly destroying it. But then they go and they fight, and they start to kind of show more hints at her starting to lose her powers here. And I think it's kind of a convenient fight for that. And they try to get Chris Pine in there as well to show that he's kind of keeping up with her, right? And they feel like they got to do that. And then there comes a point though where there's like a bunch of kids in this whole desert on a highway road, and they're playing soccer in the middle of the one highway that has a whole convoy of these armored vehicles coming down, and none of the kids think to move out of the way. And besides that point, it just seemed kind of convenient that they put them in the way to create like this some sort of like suspense that didn't really feel suspenseful. It felt kind of artificial in that sense. Didn't really feel like she was being super heroic saving the kids. Like in my mind, all I could kind of think about at the time was that it wasn't like, oh my god, how are you going to do that, or what's this new conundrum you have to face. It was more of like, why are these kids in the middle of the road, with the soccer ball,
Yeah, and
with
they
all this extra
can't
room to play, and none
hear.
of them think about moving.
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
can't hear the tanks barreling
Yeah.
towards them.
And then she goes and saves them. And then this part here is where I felt like it's one of the few scenes that like the cinematography or the action sequence just didn't really feel quite natural. She goes and saves them, and you can clearly see, even if you're not looking too carefully, but you can clearly see like when she grabs them, like it's it's animated, she's grabbing them, and like there's no shock factor for picking up the kids. Like the physics just don't quite add up. And again, maybe that's me nitpicking, but then when she rolls on them, you can see that they're dummies that she's holding.
Yeah, I did notice that.
So yeah, stuff happens in Cairo. They find out that this thing has destroyed civilizations because people can't accept the prices to their wishes. And then Diana and Barbara are like, I don't want to give up my wish. And Steve's like, you gotta. And then Max does some more just wish stuff. I don't remember specifically what. It really wasn't important. Yeah, things get bad. They fight in the White House. Barbara becomes a bad guy. Also, can we talk about the fact that her like cue that she's starting to become bad was when she beat up the guy who sexually assaulted her twice? But when Diana beat him up the first time, it was fine. But when he tries again and and she does it, that's the line. And then the homeless dude she was nice to was like, Barbara, how could you? And she's like, stay out of it. And that's like
Yeah.
she's going down a dark path, but Diana did the same thing. And there's other ways to show that someone is becoming bad other than when they beat up their sexual assaulter. Oh yeah, the fortune teller guy with the Mayan. There was that guy. That's where they found out that this thing destroys everything.
Convenient again. And it didn't feel like it just fit very well into the story.
Mhm.
Like if they wanted to go into the history of it, they don't tie any Mayan symbols into the stone at all.
Yeah, it
They
was
don't
just
tie
like,
any of
oh
the
yeah.
old language into the Mayan culture at all. Like it was again just another like convenient. It almost felt like a throwaway point,
Yeah.
just so that way they
Also,
could progress the plot.
the other reason the Mayan thing didn't really make sense for that reveal is that it was established the reason she knew that this was some mystical big thing was that it was in Latin. That she
Right.
read the Latin on it and went, oh no, this is a magical item. So basically, things escalate. The president wants nukes, so he magically gets a bunch of nukes, and then Russia's like, "Oh my god, that's so many nukes! We're gonna nuke you!" And then they threaten to nuke each other, and it's almost the apocalypse. And then Diana tearfully realizes that she has to give up her wish, so she gives up Steve. And also, earlier in the film, in a little throwaway scene, she talked about how there's an Amazonian who left earlier when the Amazonians were escaping from the humans, and they forged her armor from all of their armor so she could be strong enough to fight against all of the humans. And Diana has been looking for her. They mentioned this an hour and a half into the movie. Yeah. So Steve dies again. He convinces Diana that she must continue without him, that she'll fall in love again. He gives her permission after 66 years to move on with him, out him. Gag. She tearfully leaves him. He disappears. She can fly now. It's. I will say though, I was rolling my eyes through that whole scene, and then when she could fly again, I started to roll my eyes. But then the cinematography of that scene was really pretty. Gal Gadot is the perfect Wonder Woman. I know some people have issues with her just as a person, but whatever. When she's on scene, she's just radiant. It really feels like old Hollywood radiant, and I kind of came back a little bit in there with like some of the images of her being Wonder Woman. I was like, yes, okay, yeah, I'll push on, I'll persevere. What about you guys? What did you think of Steve dying again?
Again, I'm with you. Big eye roll, because the whole being in someone else's body was just a little too weird for me.
Yeah, it wasn't meant to be. It didn't feel like there was a sustainable way to continue that storyline, you know?
So anyway, nukes happen. Diana can fly. She gets the golden armor of Asteria, and it's really, really cool, except the wings are immediately like ripped off by Cheetah.
I mean, I liked her swinging from lightning. That's always awesome. Again, the lasso of truth is dope as heck. So
that was super cool.
Definitely need one of those. Yep.
Yeah. And then we fly to Cheetah, so she has the Asteria armor. It looks awesome. The wings for that armor were super cool, but it's a really cool fight. Cheetah destroys the armor, even though it was talked about being the strongest armor in seconds. It's destroyed. Like she immediately
That's
rips
so
like
true.
the feathers off this thing.
Oh no.
And she tries to convince Barbara to give up her witch, and Barbara's like, no. And she's like, I'm sorry. And I thought she was gonna kill Barbara, but then she didn't.
What do you guys think about that fight?
Yeah, you bring up a good point that the armor that was supposed to be one of the strongest pieces of armor and can withstand a bunch of people clinging against it, it really got ripped up by just a couple of claws.
Immediately.
And I don't know if it's because the armor was, buried for so long, if it weakened. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like the case since, Wonder Woman's own armor hasn't gotten any worse.
My understanding was that during the part where Max is broadcasting, he's receiving all the wishes. He says a line along the lines of like, "Give me your health, give me this, give her your prowess, give her your strength," or something along those lines of it. And so my understanding was that she also had the wish that she wanted to be the best, the number one, the apex predator. So I think that what they were trying to do was make her seem so powerful and strong that Diana wouldn't have been able to beat her without the armor, and at the same time that she still struggled with the armor.
So this armor was built strong enough to fight all of humanity, but a single cheetah.
I could see the cat just like scratching up on the armor, like cats usually do. And then Wonder Woman's like, "What are you doing?" I loved the armor. I loved the armor reveal. I'm so glad that it just looks so dope. But I wish that that was a thing that could have been more incorporated into the movie. I would have liked Diana and Barbara to go looking for the armor.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could have been a cooler type of bonding experience, and like a way to build their relationship a little more, because this armor is in fact an ancient relic as well, and it could have helped humanize Barbara by taking her away from these situations that it seems like she's faced for a long time, and maybe bringing her into another element that she's never been in before. And that would have been interesting. But I
I'm so
like
happy
the
you brought that
fight.
up.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool.
I definitely agree with that. Like, I think that it feels like overall the movie is just a series of convenient plot points, and if they would have separated it and really put more effort into trying to delve into some of these things that we've talked about, I think that it could have been two separate movies that could have been really phenomenal. But instead, like, they smushed so much together, or they tried to do so much that it ended up like all these things that could have been big, kind of like nice plot points, these juicy pieces of meat, ended up being like little, they just didn't really have any depth to them, you know?
Yeah. Because then we kind of get into the end where she has this confrontation with Max, and he's too strong to beat now, because now he's the wish thing is doing the opposite of it, because I guess if you say the price counteracts my price, it works that way. It's the MacGuffin stone. But she convinces him that he's wrong, and she convinces the rest of the world he's wrong, and she gives her she doesn't give him a vision of his son, but he has a vision of his son, and he's like, oh God, I've been a terrible father.
I think it's through the
So then
lasso that he's able
oh
to see.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
it is.
So then he goes to his son, and they reunite, and it's a heartfelt moment because he had a change of heart, and it's yeah, it's a movie. I would have
And
been so much more interested in the Astoria stuff, the little throwaways that they did, because she talks about how she went looking for this other Amazonian and couldn't find her, but found the armor, and then we see her at the end of the movie. But I'm just like, why couldn't that be the movie? Like, why couldn't the movie be like, we're looking for this armor, she's been looking for this armor, or she's been looking for this woman for 66 years, she finds the armor, not the woman, has to use the armor to save the world, and then we get the end credit scene with Astoria at the end.
Yep.
I would have been much more
exactly.
interested in that.
And that
I
was
would
my
100% be
favorite.
more interested in that. And that would definitely make me more interested in a sequel. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of this one,
And
it was
I
just
think
I didn't really know what to feel. They just threw so much at you that at the end of it, it's like I don't know what to feel about this.
exactly, and that's the issue with having two antagonists. You're kind of just like, wait, who am I focusing on?
Mhm.
But as I said, one of my other favorite parts about Wonder Woman is unfortunately the end. That end credit scene with Hysteria was super cool, and I wanted more of that in the movie. I'm bummed it was just like a tiny thing at the end. But I agree. The armor could have been a bigger plot point. It was just too easy. Oh, I found this armor, it's completely intact, and I somehow I hauled it back to my house.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's just conveniently there.
And
It's just
I
convenient.
love that they made Linda Carter Hysteria.
Yeah, I think that's just a
Amazing.
really cool way to incorporate her into that world. I really want her. I want to know more about Hysteria in the third movie. I hope that's what that's about. That'd be really
Right.
cool if Linda Carter got to continue doing that.
But I agree with you about the ending just being like, okay, wow, it ended great. It wasn't like that uplifting ending from Wonder Woman 1. It was just kind of like okay, now it looks like everything is back to normal. Maxwell, it doesn't seem like he's going to get prosecuted for almost destroying the world. Everything is fine, I guess.
Like, watch it if you're interested in, if you heard that. But ultimately, it was fine. Anyway, that I think that concludes us.
Well, I guess for the third one, I hope it gets better. It's like I said, it's going to be set probably in present day. I just read something about there's a rumor that Liam Neeson is in talks for Zeus, which would be very interesting because that was something that was hinted on in the first one, and then she fights Ares, and then we never get a mention of the gods again. So I'd like to see that in the next one. I'm excited to see it in present day with present day technology, and just see if her suit or like her if we get more armor.
I think the most intriguing part about this movie was the exploration, even if briefly and vaguely, about the Amazonian culture. So like the opening credits for, or not the opening credits, but the opening sequence, the first, 30 minutes of the movie, I think were the strongest part of the movie overall. And then after that, it kind of, lost its shine and draw for me through a series of just overly convenient plot points and just, inexplicable things kind of happening. A lot's thrown at you. It's not like it's overly easy to process all of what's going on, but it's not overly complex, at the same time. It's just, at the end, you're left with this feeling of this just meh, like it's not like, holy cow, this was amazing. I want to see more. You're not really driven to seeing what's going to happen in the next movie. I'm still excited to see because it definitely shows that there's still a lot of potential here, but I think then they need to put more thought behind it, especially when it comes to the writing. The cinematography was, fantastic overall throughout the whole movie. They had some great visually, stunning things. The beginning opening scene with the Amazonian culture, the Olympics, the games, beautiful. The horse riding, everything that happened, great. Then they get into the lasso of truth, and we see him we see Wonder Woman flying around. We see her lassoing on the lightning. We see her fight at the end there. And there's a lot of beautiful stuff that really happens. It's visually stunning, but the story just doesn't really drive the movie overall. And that was a bit of a disappointment. So in the next one, I would really like to see them, I think some of the things that you guys brought up today, talking about like the Amazonian armor, and getting in touch with, a mission of her going to see that would have been a great movie. And I really think they missed an opportunity on that. And I think that definitely would have been more intriguing. So something along those lines, I think would be something that I would rather see. Even if it's present day, maybe it's about going and, bringing more of the gods into it and more of the Amazonian culture. And maybe some more artifacts and really capitalizing on that aspect of it. Maybe bringing like a bit of like Tomb Raider-esque kind of a vibe to it, I think would be really nice.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show, Acrylic. It looks like we're done for, the episode.
It was a pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
Is there anything that you want to plug while you're here?
Check out Losing That on Twitch, on Facebook, wherever you get your social media.
And if you've got a topic you think we should look at, you can comment on our Facebook page or send us an email at sirensdenpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you to Ty for producing. Thank you to Sean Thomas for our awesome theme. And thank you again to Acrylic Spark for being here and talking some Wonder Woman with us.
Bye. Bye.